So UFC 292 taking place this Saturday, headlined by the matchup between Aljamain Sterling and Sean O'Malley. And honestly, this really is a big fight for Aljo low-key in terms of his legacy, because a win right here could do him well in his quest to become the greatest bantamweight of all time. The card itself sucks. Nah, it don't for real. It's just a little worse than it was originally supposed to be due to some pullouts. All in all though, it's still solid. To go ahead and get into the main event, I'ma keep it short and simple. I believe Aljamain absolutely ragdolled Sean O'Malley. There's been a lot of people on the internet trying to gas the fight up a little bit, play it as if the matchup is more interesting than it probably will end up being, and people are mainly doing that by playing up Sean O'Malley's wrestling and grappling skills. And while yes, his grappling is underrated by many, he still ain't Aljamain Sterling. And while Aljo ain't some god-level wrestler, he's good enough and really strong enough to probably do what he want with O'Malley, I ain't gonna lie. Not to mention that Sean O'Malley, like many other fighters to be honest, has shown a propensity to turn and give up his back. Or more so just put him in positions where an elite back taker like Aljo will surely find a way to do so, regardless if he actually gets the fight down to the ground or not. Because we know what Aljo's approach gonna be. He spams takedowns against Olympic wrestlers, pretty good wrestlers, bad wrestlers, injured wrestlers. They all get the exact same treatment. I think O'Malley gonna get it worse than everybody else before in the event. But I think the first time or two Aljo get his hands on O'Malley and probably gets the fight to the ground, it'll be over. With all that being said though, Sean O'Malley presents a problem to Aljamain Sterling that realistically no one else he's fought has. He can end this fight extremely quickly. O'Malley is one of the most dynamic strikers in the division. With one shot too, it's different than somebody like Corey Sandhagen, who obviously Aljo has dominated in the past. Physically they do share a similar build, but they fight completely different. Sean O'Malley is the epitome of a sniper, and he does a lot of heavy sitting on his shots, particularly that straight left when he commits. Because when he commits, he's fully in it. And obviously that's done him a lot of good in the past. It could do him good if he ends up landing the shot against Aljo, but boy, if he misses, that might just end up being the catalyst for the ending of the fight. So to me, I think it's interesting, because I think the fight ends within the first few exchanges, I ain't gonna lie. And I think it'll all depend on if Sean O'Malley lands the shot against Aljo or if he misses. So yeah, I don't really think it's a lot to think about with this fight. I think it'll end pretty quick, and I'm gonna side with Aljamain Sterling once again, unfortunately. Moving on to the co-main event, Zhang Weili starts her second stint as champion against Amanda Lemos. And this fight kind of interesting too, because I ain't gonna lie, both of these women fight and hit like men. And that's an interesting thing for Weili, because I don't think there's nobody else in this division that can outpower her. We've seen plenty of examples in the past of Weili blitzing, overwhelming, just overpowering these women. But I don't think she's going to be able to just do that to Lemos on the feet, because Lemos fights very well with range, and again, she is extremely powerful. Now, I think her biggest weakness on the feet is the fact that I wouldn't even call it plotting for real. She just don't really move, to be honest. So I think that the movement, finding of angles, and constant combinations are going to be Weili's keys to success on the feet if need be. Personally though, I think Weili should use her much improved wrestling in this bout, as it'll serve her best. One, because again, she's gotten a lot better at it. Two, Lemos ain't shown to be a very good wrestler at all. And three, it'll probably help Weili a lot in gassing out Lemos as I don't even think she could go 5 rounds normally, let alone if Weili make it a little ugly. And if Weili do end up getting Lemos down, I think she'll have a lot more success than her previous opponents did in holding her down and keeping her there. Now, if she can't, the fight once again gets a lot more interesting, because boy, Lemos hits hard, and she'll definitely probably have the advantage at range. Now, Weili's always been better than me on the inside, putting together the combinations, using her strength, stuff like that. But even in this fight, I think that's a little more dicey, a lot more in that 50-50 territory. So if Weili goes in and use her wrestling, I think she'll handle this one. But it's still a scary proposition. Moving on, the youngin' Ian Gary got blessed by Jesus Christ himself with Jeff Neal pulling out, because I ain't think that was going to go too well for him. But now he's fighting probably the ultimate gatekeeper, the greatest gatekeeper of all time in Magni. And Ian's a massive favorite in this one. I do understand why, but Magni do present an interesting style low-key, and overall just has the experience to find a way to get this done. If he goes in there and really smothers Ian Gary, puts a lot of pressure on him, pushes a high pace like he usually does, and mixes it up and just makes it ugly for Ian Gary, he might be able to handle the youngin'. I ain't gonna front. But I do think Ian Gary's a little too fast, a bit too precise, and just too young for Magni. I don't know. I feel like Neil getting a little old. Even though he's still performing extremely well, I feel like the evolution of Ian Gary is going to be too much for even this geezer to handle. Wouldn't be surprised if Magni just handled the youngin' though, I ain't gonna lie. I'm going Ian Gary though. Chito Vera is going to fight Pedro Munoz. Even though this is a step down in competition for Chito from what he's been doing, it's still an interesting fight as Pedro Munoz is always shown to be game. Even so, we know what he about this point, so he's a lot more predictable, and he's stupid slow. And he also really likes to use his chin as his defense. And when you fight somebody that hits as hard as Chito does, I don't really think that's the best course of action. I'm also hoping and praying that Chito changes up his approach here, because in his previous fight, he obviously did nothing against Corey Sandhagen. And he's always adjusted well after losses, so hopefully he can do that again. Now at distance, Chito absolutely runs this matchup. On the inside, it can be a little more interesting, I guess. Even though for the most part, Pedro Munoz is more of an outside fighter himself, he has shown in the past that he can get into a good brawl. And with how his chin is held up over the years, brawling with him really ain't the best thing to do. So as long as Chito do keep this at a distance, his reach advantages, power advantage, and the variety in his attack will probably get him this dub. And quickly before I end, I want to bring up the geezer Chris Weidman. Much respect to him for returning after an 8-year layoff from a horrendous leg break. But he is 40 now, and I don't really think he's going to look too good. Not to mention he fighting Brad Tavares, who's always been a top 15 floater, and still is that. So I think he loses, but much respect to him for returning. Good card. I'm excited. Feel like the main event go low-key be kind of boring because I feel like I know what's going to happen, but it's cool.